The final team, the Utah Jazz. Buy, sell, or hold?
Buy, similar to the Suns a little bit because they're so good and their needs are. You know what? The Jazz have more clearer needs than the Suns do, but they're relatively smaller, I guess. No,
Who's
Sorry, not smaller. They're bigger because the wing defense thing is a real thing. Sorry,
I actually have, before you go into yours, I've actually brought up now probably the third time in this podcast. I was listening to Dunked On, who I believe was citing the Locked On Jazz podcast, where the notion was brought up that the Jazz also could just use like sort of a help rotating rim protector so that Rudy Gobert can trust what's happening behind him when he's actually being pulled further away from the basket. It's not necessarily about getting, Marcus Smart seems to be, I've gotten a few, I would say at least half a dozen DMs from Jazz fans looking at mailbag questions to respond to the podcast we talked about. Could they trade for Marcus Smart? And that level of player would be, even Josh Richardson for this team would be spectacular. But I thought it was interesting that maybe you don't only need to target a wing. Is it like someone who's, like a 4 that can also play beside Rudy Gobert? He's closer to a big, but he's going to give you some help rim protection. And I was just curious what you thought about the notion of that, or does it just make more sense given what happens a lot, especially in transition to the Jazz, that it needs to be like a wing defense or bust situation?
I mean, I can appreciate the logic of that. I mean, the thing is like this hypothetical 4 that is going to provide like weak side rim protection still needs to be able to guard on the perimeter, right? So like, who is that? Like, it's Jeremy Grant. I guess Jeremy Grant, like, or if you can get Jeremy Grant to combine like his Oklahoma City and Denver selves and the Detroit self into one player. I don't know. Is there, so you know what I mean? Like, sure, I agree.
I think my issue with them is how do they get like the Jeremy Grant or the Harrison Barnes sweepstakes? How do you enter that? Because they can't trade a pick until 2026. And does Jared Butler and a 2026 pick plus to get to the salary, Joe Ingles alone isn't floating it. So you're getting into the realm of Jordan Clarkson, or are you moving Bojan Bogdanovic? I don't think you should move Bojan Bogdanovic. I think the Jazz's offense is good enough to where they could withstand the trading basically anyone who's not Donovan Mitchell, and I would say, or Mike Conley, depending on who they're getting back. But I wouldn't trade Bogdanovic. And so just because those guys are so expensive and the distant pick equity you would have to give up to get them, it feels like they're more in the Josh Richardson, Robert Covington type tier, or that this could all end with them getting David Nwaba or Torrey Craig.
Yeah, I think Craig is someone I had on my list as just like, for that reason, the guy that you don't have to give up Ingles or Bogdanovic to get theoretically. I think of the guys, I mean, Clarkson to me, I guess I've just never been in on Clarkson. I thought Ingles probably was a better 6-man last year. Ingles has been not very good this year, but Clarkson seems expendable. I just like you in the playoffs, you know what you need, and barring the occasional like Lou Williams won you a game 4 one time, like the high scoring 6-man is like not is less valuable than the guy who can, like you say, potentially be like your weak side shot blocker and guard someone on the things you need in the playoffs are just different. So, but what are you getting for Jordan Clarkson?
Negative, right? Because 2 years and like 27.6 million left on his deal for what he provides you in the regular season is in terms of shot creation and making. Like that's not over the top. Whereas Ingles is getting older on expiring contracts. So yeah, if you want cap relief, that's fine. But I would even argue that maybe Jordan Clarkson is the more valuable trade asset than Ingles at this point.
It's possible, which would be great because I would trade him before I traded Ingles, I think, probably. No, but yeah, I mean, their needs are, I mean, before getting to the sort of like, let's think harder about it and let's get a weak side shot blocker. They just, I think it's overthinking it to get past like, they got beat by a team that was smaller and that they couldn't stay in front of in the playoffs on the perimeter last year. Like that's what happened. So I think Rudy Gay addressed some of the downsized 5 options that, I think that was like a big question in the offseason is that the point of this? Is he going to be able to do that? And he's played like just, I think a little less than 20% of his minutes at the 5. And I think the lineups have done well. I don't know, I haven't looked it up, but
they've been hit or miss based on the data.
Yeah. But they have, in theory, they have an option now. They just don't have that wing stopper. I don't know if Ingles and Jared Butler or whatever you want to do will get you that. Like, you're not getting Grant. You're not getting, I don't know. Who else is even
Because like
Barnes is just
the Kings aren't trading you Barnes for Clarkson and Ingles, right? Like, what do you need to sweeten
no.
that with? Yeah.
That's the thing. So, I just like I'm just looking through possible guys they could add. I think it's gonna be a Torrey Craig type, someone like that. And again, the Jazz will be buyout players too, although they are. I think they're like close to almost 15 million into the tax, but they do have 2 open roster spots by my count. So they are they are positioned to be a buyout team, but that's going to hurt tax wise.
What do you think of the Marcus Smart idea for them?
I mean, that'd be phenomenal. Like, he's exactly what they need. I don't know if that's realistic that they can make that happen.
Yeah, a lot of the trades that I've seen bandied about Jazz Twitter and even were proposed to me, and I'm not insulting anyone who sent them to me, by the way, but was like Jordan Clarkson, and there wasn't really any sweeteners in there. And I know Marcus Smart is going to have that extension kick in after this season, and he's had a terrible season as a shooter and finisher this year. But I still just what he gives you on defense. Yeah, maybe you're worried about that. What was it, 4 years and 72 or whatever it is that he's on the books for? I still think you have to give up, or if you're Boston, why would you give up Marcus Smart without getting back a first round pick or a equivalent prospect? And the name that I've said for them many times, and I don't think people realize that he's been solid this season, or at least not as many people, is Josh Richardson. It's just I don't want to give up my 2026 first. So there would have to be other moves involved if it's happening. But like, does an Ingles plus Butler get you Josh Richardson? Does Clarkson alone plus minimal sweeteners get you Josh Richardson? Boston's looking to duck the tax. So like, how does that impact what's happening? But Richardson felt like the best realistic name to me for the Jazz, because he's definitely a cut above the Craigs, the Justin Holidays, way above the David Nwabas. But he's also like, I think it will take more to get Marcus Smart. I know people outside of Boston might not like that deal, but Marcus Smart can defend 4 positions capably. And he also leads the Celtics in assists this season. Like, he is important. He's sloppy within the pick and roll, but like, he's also important to them running their offense. So I don't think you're just getting him. I don't even think if you offered your choice of Ingles or Jordan Clarkson plus that first, I don't think Boston's even doing that deal, to be honest.
No. Do you think Bogdanovic for Smart straight up? Who says no? It's a who says no question.
I think it's Boston, just because Bogdanovic is going to be in the last year of his deal next season. He's older, and he gives you more of what you need when you're looking at shooting on offense, but you need rim pressure, playmaking, and like a general floor just an overall floor general. And you're also kind of hurting your playmaking by turning Smart into Bogdanovic. And so unless you have like an upgrade, like a point guard who can not only attack, but also set up your offense and get you into it, that feels like so the deal I came up with on the last podcast was Mike Conley going to Boston, basically for either it was a 3-team deal where the Jazz got back Marcus Smart and Kemba Walker. So like they were getting another point guard back, or they took Schroeder into the Derek Favors trade exception, and then they got Josh Richardson and Smart for Mike Conley. I floated something along those lines.
That's interesting. I really like Conley, what's that?
He's been so his numbers on like off the dribble jumpers this season are just through the roof.
Yeah, I think I think certainly that would give the Jazz like more of what they need, but that's tough. Yeah, I don't know who's most likely to be traded. Do we say that yet?
I think I settle on Ingles just because he's expiring, older, and it feels like there's been more noise about that. If I were to pick who I'm moving, I would move. I agree with you. I'm with Jordan Clarkson, that he's the guy I'm moving.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I guess maybe the other guys you might think about are like Butler as a sweetener, but again, I don't know. I think the more I think about it, I like the idea of Bogdanovic. Bogdanovic is really good. I think he's a key part of why that offense hums like it does. I think he's kind of very often underrated, but
if you're the Jazz then, and I don't even know if this guy, because it's not, Bogdanovic isn't getting you Jeremy Grant. Would Bogdanovic and Butler and a second get you Harrison Barnes from the Kings? And does that actually help you with what you need? Because I don't view Barnes as a wing stopper.
So
I kind of like
you're reuniting Butler and Davion Mitchell. So that's something the Kings would care about probably for some reason. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. It's hard. I guess Barnes just gives you a more balanced player and more to, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I feel that much better about Barnes on like a wing as a small ball four than I do about Bogdanovic. Maybe a little.
definitely a little, but not to the extent that, oh, this makes a ton of sense for us.
Yeah, that's not a we just put ourselves over the top move. But it's interesting. I mean, you'd have to think about that at least, just because he's a different type of player, I guess.
Robert
Yeah, I don't
Covington
know.
feels like the middle ground, right? Where
Yeah,
it's the Blazers probably would, I don't know why they would take Clarkson, but they should, expiring for expiring. And like you said, it could help them get under the tax and maybe get a little bit of a sweetener. So that feels like the middle ground move that would be more realistic.
yeah, I'm with that.